So we are thrilled today to have Dr. DeRetta Rhodes join us. She is the Senior Vice President and Head of HR for the Atlanta Braves, which she supports in the Major League, the Minor League, the Battery Property Development, and all areas of the People Capital Initiatives. Previously, DeRetta was the Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer of the YMCA Metro. She was Vice President of Human Resources at First Data, Vice President of Human Resources for Turner Broadcasting Systems Incorporated, with supporting global technology operations. Before joining Turner, DeRetta held leadership roles with Ernst & Young, ADP, HomeGrocer.com, and Yum Brand Foods. DeRetta received her undergraduate degree from University of Georgia, her Master's in Business Association from Clark Atlanta University, and finally her PhD in Adult Education from the University of Georgia as well. Currently, she is the Board Director and member of 21st Century Leaders, Board Director and Member Engagement Chair for the Human Resource Leadership Forum, advisory member of the HR Exchange Network, and past president of the Alumni Board of the Family and Consumer Sciences at UGA. So as you can see, she comes with a great background. We're just thrilled to learn from her today. So we will hand it over to Dr. Rhodes.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I so appreciate that. And I'm so glad to be here with you guys. It is such a pleasure. And I'm just glad to talk about gaining your dream job. And I will tell you that it doesn't necessarily have to be one dream job. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I can talk with you about my journey as I have experienced things over and over and over again. I'm so glad to be here with you all and to be doing this in conjunction with Troy University Career Services. So I wanted to start off by saying, so you see this picture of the Disney Castle. And so I'm a huge, huge, huge Disney fan, always have been, from a leadership perspective and all of the things that you can imagine when you think about Disney. And when I started in human resources, one of the conversations that I always wanted to have with people is that I wanted to make your dreams come true. And it always was resulting around having the best job you possibly can. So I started the conversation about Jiminy Cricket. So most of you should know the story of Jiminy Cricket. He was a character that was part of Pinocchio. But what you probably didn't understand about Jiminy Cricket is he is considered the sequential mentor. So a lot of the comments that he would make with Pinocchio was very specific around mentoring someone. And this is really critical to think about when you're thinking about obtaining or gaining your dream job. The best quote I love from Jiminy Cricket is, "When your heart is in your dreams, no request is too extreme." So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about exactly where do you start thinking about what your dream job is. And you know, a lot of times we associate our dream job with so many different things. It can be the new knowledge that we have that we now want to go share with everyone else. It could be the potential that we know that we have, or the potential that someone else knows or sees in us. It can be the values and wanting to be a part of an organization or even a nonprofit and what they do and how they do it. It can be around aspirations, our aspirations to get other people there. It could be around the position that you require or want to have. And a lot of times what I try to equate to people is that it also can be around happiness. And it all rests around the opportunities that you can have in not just one job. And that's why I mentioned the fact that it can be several dream jobs that you decide that you want to have, but it's really critical to understand what is it that you really want. And I think the one that's always been important to me and how I've always tried to speak to people about, and why I always have said, if I am coaching executive or coaching individuals or mentoring or just sponsoring an individual, it is about, I want your dreams to come true. And how do we make that happen? And it's around hope. And it's around thinking about those things that you want to have as possibilities. So I'm not going to actually talk in just generalities. We're going to talk specifically around how you change that hope into action items in obtaining your dream job. So one of the things that I really want to talk about is culture. And so a lot of times, and it's funny because there's so much research out there about culture, there's so many things that speak to culture. And what I like to talk about as it relates to culture is when you are a part of an organization or you're a part of something that's large, how does it make you feel? And I know that seems so abstract in the sense of, oh, is that what culture really is? But what I wanted to give you an opportunity as you're thinking about, again, organizations that you want to be a part of, or nonprofits that you want to be a part of, or boards that you want to be a part of, what is it about that particular organization, nonprofit, or board that draws you there? And when you think about culture, there's so many components that are part of that. It is the greater community. I can share the story with everyone about the fact that I had served on several different boards for various different reasons, but when I had the opportunity to go work for a nonprofit, the body of work that I had the opportunity to do there was surpassing anything that I've done before. And for me, at that point in time in my career and in my life, it was around greater community. At that point, I wanted to serve in a position, not only from a professional standpoint with all of the knowledge and experience that I had gained, but what could I do within the community that would make a larger impact? So culture are all these things that we put in together, and it makes a decision around, is that where we want to be? Knowledge and stories are very important. The language, and what does that mean? The language is, what is the language of the organization? We all sit in different places, whether it be in our own families, within our school environment. There is a language that's often used. And are we comfortable with what that language is and what is being said? Traditions and rituals. I can speak to you about the Atlanta Braves, and the biggest ritual and tradition is opening day and what that means. And so that's something that organizations have in terms of what their culture looks like. The requirements of techniques and skills, tools and objects, arts can be a part of that. Again, what is the outreach? I can speak to that with the Atlanta Braves as well, is that we have individuals that come here to just tour our facility, to learn about what we have and the players and our history. That is something that also is part of a culture. I put food and drink there because a lot of times, and I know for us and different organizations that I've been a part of, that food and drink had to do with, how do you socialize? What does the socialization look like within that particular culture? And is that something that you want to be a part of, or that is important to you? I think it comes down, and this is my perspective, is that all of this is girded in the values that an organization has, which drives all through the culture. Now, I'm sure you're asking, why am I talking about culture, about obtaining my dream job? It's important. It is so important that when you think about an organization and somewhere you want to be, that you're going to spend an inordinate amount of time with, you want to make sure that that culture aligns with who you are. I think about all of my opportunities and roles that I've had, and I think about at the timing of them and why it was important to me to go there. When I finished my undergraduate degree in hotel restaurant management, I literally wanted to go run a hotel. That's what I thought I was going to end up doing in my career. I had the opportunity to go work for a division of PepsiCo on the restaurant side, and I was amazed at what the alignment was for me in terms of just the value. And the value was around how they interpreted, treated, researched about people. And from there, I had a very good understanding of what both human resources, or what we call in my department now, people capital, what that truly meant. And I got to watch how this organization had, at that point in time, they had a think tank of doctorates, of researchers that focused merely on the engagement of employees. Had I not researched and had I not thought about how important that was for me, I probably would have never made the decision to go work for, at the time, it was PepsiCo, and then it was spun off to Yum Brand. So I started my career at both Taco Bell and Pizza Hut. And trust me, I know how to make a taco and I know how to deliver a pizza as a result of it. But the values around how they situated human resources was critically important.
Thank you.
Now, let me just say, I did practice this, and I practiced it perfectly before I got started. The conversation that you should be thinking about is with culture. Are you aligned with an organization that you're thinking about you want to be a part of? It's funny, I talk to individuals all the time about this very conversation, and I say to them, so what company do you think you want to be a part of? And they'll say to me, Apple or Facebook. And I'll say, I want you to do research. I want you to look into what do they do? How do they do it? What is the philosophy of the leaders that are there? What is the structure of the organization? Do they serve the community? Do they have corporate responsibility? I think it's critically important that you do all of your research in the very beginning, because I often liken it to the fact that I can talk to you about what I don't want to do. And if I can understand that very clearly, it truly helps me align to what I really want to do. So that's why it's so important to think about culture as you're thinking about what you want to do in obtaining that amazing job. So if I stop right here and I say, okay, we've talked about the culture, we've talked about these are the things I know I want to make sure that I'm aligned with an organization that I decide to go to work for. Well, the other piece that's really critical is you, and it is your professional brand. So I'll tell you a funny story. I Googled myself last night. I said, let me take a look and see if someone were to Google me, what exactly would they see? And I just wanted to see what was out there. So do you know how important that is to understand what your outward professional brand looks like? This is the critical part you need to think about. And so, as I said, I Googled myself. And out of looking at my Google, and I'm going to show you a few pictures and share a few things, but one of the things I want to talk about is when you think of your professional brand. So how do you make your brand to stand out? What are the things that you do? And as I was stating, research indicates you have 30 seconds to make an impression and 8 more encounters to either change it or enhance it. So when people get to meet you for the first time, now in the world that we're in today, either virtually or live, what impression are you making that you are standing out and you are differentiating yourself? So when you think about that particular organization, or you have an opportunity to meet a leader that's part of that organization, what do you want to do when you have the opportunity to meet them and experience them so that you can stand out and they remember you? I have that happen to me often. I know for me personally, there was a leader that I was so in awe of in an organization that I used to work for. She was absolutely amazing to me. I would be able to see her in various different meetings from afar, and I would be able to hear her talk. And I just wanted to get an opportunity to meet her because she was such an amazing speaker. She was such an amazing leader, and everybody that worked for her absolutely loved her. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to meet Irie, because I just want to have an opportunity to say hello. So I got that chance to meet Irie. And it's funny because I met her and I was very, very, very specific about, I told her my name, the department I worked in, and all of that good stuff, because I wanted to make sure I made a great impression. So it was a great experience. And the good news for me as well is that there are other people that knew her, that had worked with her, and had the opportunity also to speak to her about me. And so when I had the next opportunity to meet her, I said, I would love to spend some time and just talk to you about your career. And she was like, I'd love to do that. And so we had our first actual meeting. And I sat down and I had all these questions that I had for her. And the interesting thing is that she started asking me questions, which I was like, uh-oh. So when she started asking me questions, they were very specific questions about how do I think people see me? She asked me, what was my leadership style? She asked me, what are the things that I feel like I'm driving in the organization? And, you know, I stopped for a minute. And when I realized everything that was happening, she was really speaking to me in terms of, I need for you to tell me about your brand. I need for you to explain to me who you are and what your brand is. Now, she didn't say that specifically in those particular words, but she definitely drove home this perspective of when you have an opportunity to be in front of someone, you want to make sure that that impression counts. And you want to be able to explain to an individual, if I said to you, I want to go work for Disney because I love their leadership, I should be able to explain to you why that's important to me and how everything that I'm doing from my brand perspective is the reason I should go work there. And so I think when we start talking about this and we become deliberate around, I know what my brand is, I know how I want people to view me, it becomes critically important with every single thing that you do. And that is the very reason why I put on there, what is your digital footprint? So, it's interesting, and I speak to individuals all the time. So within my organization now and organizations that I've been a part of, as I was dealing either with hiring managers or if I managed talent acquisition, which is actually recruiting, they always, believe it or not, would go and check somebody's Facebook page, Twitter page now, Instagram, and anything that you have a digital footprint. Sometimes it's just important to go out and Google yourself, like I did last night, so you can understand what is your digital footprint. Because in this time now, it's really critically important to understand what that looks like. Now I want to pause for a minute and talk a little bit, because I've talked a little bit about culture. I've talked about your professional brand and you thinking about what you want your brand to be if you haven't done so already. And in some instances, your brand may be already out there and you may want to make tweaks or adjustments. You may want to seek a mentor like Jiminy Cricket and have those conversations around what brand looks like. How am I showing up? The other thing that I also recommend is that if there are certain assessments that you can go out there and do, because they give you a really great barometer and a really great guide on how you show up oftentimes. And I recommend that a lot of times when I do coaching and I do mentoring for individuals. For me, it is really understanding and having a self-awareness about who you are and how you're showing up. And that's critically important when you know that well, and then how you align that with an organization that you want to be a part of. So let's talk a little bit more about the digital footprint. So I would say to you guys, and this is one thing that maybe 5 years ago, this was not the case, maybe 7, maybe I'm not counting my years right, but LinkedIn has become the actual soldier to folks finding roles and for folks finding out about each other. I absolutely love LinkedIn because it is probably, to me, one of the best professional social platforms that you can use in order to engage and get to know people. And so the thing is that at any given time, someone can look up your LinkedIn profile. So you really want to think about what's out there on your profile. What does it look like? I will tell you, in 3 instances, I have had individuals that have come to me directly about either board assignments and, believe it or not, jobs, one of which I took with First Data. And so we may not realize the power of what that does, but this particular platform, you have the power. You have the ability to go out and create what your LinkedIn profile would look like. And so I would say to you, think about that. Because again, recruiters use that all of the time when they may have possibly met you, and you yourself can use it too when you want to go out and look at organizations. It's interesting. I talked a little bit about values and the importance of that from a culture perspective. This is a great opportunity if you are seeking a position for you to be able to go out to organizations, look them up, and see what their stance is on what's going on in the country today. If that's critically important to you, you should be able to discern very quickly if that's an organization I want to be a part of and leaders that I want to be led by, or is that not an organization I want to be a part of and I want to make a different decision. So that's what I love about LinkedIn. You have such great opportunities with this digital platform to do just that. And so this is what I would say to you. Think about what your digital footprint is. I talked about professional brand and how often you have an opportunity to make a difference or a change or enhance what someone has had the opportunity to experience you as, but think about that digital footprint, because the interesting thing about the digital footprint is that it typically does not go away. I have these conversations with my sons all the time, although they laugh at me and say, Mom, you're talking about Facebook. Nobody uses Facebook except for old people, is what they've said to me. And so the conversation around any of that, and I used to say to my sons, you know, you've got your grandmother, your godmother on Facebook. Be careful what you're saying and doing. I'd say the same thing as we talk about professional brand. So then it goes back to, what do you want people to remember you for? What do you want when you walk away from an experience with someone or an encounter? What do you want them to say about you? And so I think about the fact that when I have an opportunity to engage with someone, and I want to make sure that it is a memorable experience for them, I always try to make sure I can align what my identifying values are I want them to think of me about. Reliability would be one of them. That's one of the things that is critically important to me. I want you to walk away and say, I know that Dr. Rhodes or DeRetta is reliable. I know that if I contacted her, she would either respond to me, she would get back to me. She is somebody that I can count on. The other thing that is critically important to me in terms of what I want people to remember me for is that I allowed you the space to use your voice. I have to think about that quite a bit in the roles that I've been in the position I have today, in my community, in the work that I do and a lot of my nonprofit work, is that I want people to know I value their voice. And so when that's the case, that means that they know that they can count on me to hear them, to understand them, and to actually give them space to be able to use their voice. The other thing that I always want people to remember me for is that you felt like I was courageous. You felt like the things that I talked to you about, that I spoke to in a way in which I tried to break through my fears, although I have them every single day, and I courageously walked in the spirit of having that voice myself to have conversations that were critical. When I think about what I want to be remembered for today, I think it's so important, even especially now, around listening to voice, around making sure that I'm empowering those to feel courageous to also use their voice. So I want you to take just a couple minutes to think about the words that you want to be remembered for. So it goes back to me from the perspective of making sure you use your brand, and your brand also coincides with what do you want people to remember you for when they walked away from having a conversation with you. And I think that's so important when you think about, how do I want to attain my dream job? It all becomes a very secular way of looking at how you want to be viewed, how you want to be remembered, and the organizations that you want to be a part of. So when I talk about voice, this is one thing when I had the opportunity to do a TED Talk, and my TED Talk was about the importance of women in leadership positions. And what I said in part of that talk is I always want an individual to bring their whole self to work. The moment you can't do that, you're not able to grow and thrive in an organization. And so it goes back and it aligns to my whole conversation around voice. So if that's what I've said and that's what my mantra is, that's what I hope you remember me when I'm having a conversation with you, when we're discussing things that are important to you and driving to what your goals are. The other thing I think that is critically important, and again, this goes back to that whole social footprint. Now I will say to you, I didn't take that picture. That ended up being a quote that someone else used that came from my TED Talk. I had no idea that that was happening. So a lot of times you don't realize you're being watched and people can see you. So again, I want you to go back to, what do you want people to think of you after they've experienced or encountered you? And I'm sure you're saying to me, or you're wanting to ask the question, what does this have to do with obtaining a good job? or obtaining my dream job. So when you think about what organizations are made of, they're made up of people. People make decisions about bringing individuals into an organization that they are both comfortable with, that they relate with, and they feel like they can grow with. And so that's the connection oftentimes that people make when they're making decisions about looking at your LinkedIn profile, bringing you in to have a conversation and interview you, having you work for the company that they are a part of, and having you grow and develop in that organization. So connectivity is critically important because as people, that's what we do all the time. And so that's why it's important to understand the culture of an organization and then also know your brand and what your value is and what you want to be remembered for, and know that people are watching. So this was one last thing I wanted to show. And this was, I had the opportunity to go and speak with this gentleman, and it was Making Money Conversations. And it's funny, I was asked to come speak specifically to talk about how employers, and it was entrepreneurs at the time, what did they need to do and think about when they hired the right person? So what I'll say to you is that we're sitting here having this conversation about how do you obtain your dream job. On the flip side of that, leaders and organizations are trying to figure out how do they get the best talent. So it's not a one-way street. It is very much, to me, a reciprocity around the fact that you're looking to obtain that dream job you want, and organizations are looking to find amazing talent. And I think the reality is that if we both showcase brilliantly together, it's able to come together in a very, very positive way. So when you think about it, it's just not about you trying to obtain that job. There are people that are looking for you to come be part of an organization. And so think about that as you were thinking through, yeah, it's about me obtaining a great job and what that looks like and what I want people to say about me. But it's also about these particular organizations saying and thinking that they want to make sure that we get the best talent. And what do you look like? And I'm so impressed with you, and so forth and so on. So I just want to make sure that you think about that along the way when you're thinking about obtaining your dream job. So I go back to the beginning of the conversation that I had was around what Jiminy Cricket said. When your heart is in your dreams, no request is too extreme. So when you think about all of the things that I've discussed and shared and what are the things you want to be able to do, you're able to think about not only that dream job, but that culture you want to be a part of and how you're showing up and how you want people to remember you. So when they walk away from having an encounter with you, they're saying, I want this individual to be a part of my organization, to be a part of my board, and to join me in the things that we're doing. So at this point, I am going to stop and do any questions that people may have.
Thank you, Dr. Rhodes. That was amazing. What's the best way to research an organization or company's culture in terms of what they represent?
That's a great question. So a lot of times you can just go online and you can learn so much about an organization. The other thing that I would also recommend is that oftentimes when you do go online, they have different individuals that you can actually contact in terms of learning about corporate culture or learning about their corporate responsibility and all the things that they do. Another way that's always very good also to learn about an organization is that if you are doing any type of professional networking and you get a card from somebody, and I know a card is probably very cliche, you get their contact information and you're able to speak with them directly. I'm telling you, every organization, every representative of most organizations wants to talk about it. The other thing too, a lot of times if you go into LinkedIn and you go into a particular organization, they will have a list of their recruitment team, and recruiters, that's their job. They're supposed to answer questions specifically about the organization, and you can easily go in and begin to have those conversations. But a lot of times you just have to start there and just do a little research to get to the person you need to get to have those type of conversations.
So Ashley asked, what's your advice for new graduates who may not have that professional brand and portfolio yet, but are looking for their dream job?
That's a great question. So, it's funny. I work with a lot of graduates that are coming out, and what I would say to you is that you actually do have a brand. Whatever you did while you were in college, where it was extracurricular activities or whether it was specific to clubs that you were a part of or it was specific to things that you did within your program, you need to advertise that. It's funny, I have this conversation and I say to people all the time, this is what I want you to start off doing. I need for you to make a list of all of your accomplishments. Do not leave one thing out. Everything that you've done. If you've done things with your churches, if you've done things in your community, a lot of times we don't think about those are transferable to job skills that people can look at and say, oh my gosh, you led a blood drive, or you did something that was a fundraiser. Well, the reality is that that's really around development, and you can speak to that. So it's putting down all of your accomplishments that you've had while you've been in college, all of those things, and it is transferable to listing, this is what your competency is in that particular area. So do not sell yourself short in thinking just because I'm a new college grad that I don't have experience. You actually do. If you finished a degree and you're out of a program, trust me, I know there's lots of things that you've done while you've been in that program that you can speak to.
Okay. Mary was asking about, do you believe it's important to pursue another degree beyond the bachelor's? And Mary may need to qualify. That's going to depend on the field that somebody goes into. I guess as a supplemental question, though, others were asking about getting involved in management of sports, maybe with the Braves or other areas. So can you speak to pursuing the sports industry? And then also, would you recommend a degree beyond a bachelor's for that degree field?
So sure. So let me talk to you a little bit about pursuing that. If you think about sports, they have typically a front office that consists of finance and accounting, HR, marketing, all of the traditional things that any organization has. So if you were to go on, and the Atlanta Braves is a great place to go to, not right now because all of our jobs are frozen considering where we are with the season and the pandemic, but in most cases, all of our positions are posted, and you can go into Braves.com and see them and see if there's a role that specifically aligns with what you're interested in, specifically in the sports side. It's funny, I worked for Turner Broadcasting, and I had for several years, and I supported our sports division and our broadcasting sports division. And the thing is that a lot of times people don't know the plethora of jobs that's in sports. That's not just, thinking of coaches and thinking of the traditional things you see with sports. It's running a business. I tell people all the time, when I started with the Braves, I knew about baseball because I was a baseball mom and I loved baseball and grew up with it with my grandfather. But I didn't understand and know the business of baseball, and it is fascinating. So there's so many things that are out there that you can pursue within the sports arena. Now, the question about a degree, I probably am not the best one to have this conversation because I'm going to say yes, and I can say that to you because I have a terminal degree. And my mother said to me after I finished my doctorate that I could not go back to school anymore. And so I've always stated that what education provides for you is credibility. The reason I went back to get my doctorate was that very reason, that I had the credibility in that area that I'm in and the research that I focus on. And so I think it's really important to think about that. But you do have to make choices around the paying for college and what gain you would receive from that. But I'm always a proponent of pursuing education.
Thank you. And she actually commented that she is an education major. So that's valuable to hear from you, though. Sherry asked, what's your advice for those out there that are on the call today that want to change careers later in life? She's currently involved in furthering her education, but how else can she break in?
Oh, that's a great question. So this goes back to the conversation. It's relatively the same as I talked about those individuals that are coming out with their degrees. So this is the thing. It goes back to most things that we do in any type of role or job, although some of them are very niched, they're transferable skills that you're gaining, whether it's problem solving, whether it's communication, whether it's project management, whether any of those things. So what oftentimes individuals that are trying to make a transition from one career to another, I always recommend, again, do the same thing I just said, write down all of your accomplishments. But the other thing you have